Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Junkyard Dawgcast. I'm your host, Jordan Hill. Got the whole crew with us, Ben, Wolk, and Kipp Adams, on this Tuesday afternoon as Georgia prepares for Mississippi State, another big home SEC game for the Bulldogs. But, fellas, we got to start with Tuesday's news out of Athens. Early Tuesday morning, Georgia receiver Colbie Young was arrested by Athens Clark County Police on misdemeanor charges of battery and assault on an unborn child. Per jail records, Young was booked at 4:18 a.m. on Tuesday morning and is currently incarcerated. I should say the last I checked was about 11:30, but still incarcerated. No bond available in that situation. We have the arrest report details up on Dawgs 24/7. I would encourage folks to go look at that. Obviously, a bad situation for the Bulldogs, a situation that they ran into in July when Ra Thomas was arrested in a situation somewhat similar, led to Ra's dismissal. We don't know yet what Kirby Smart and Georgia's going to do. I reached out to Georgia this morning to get a comment on the situation. Have not heard back as of about 11:45 Eastern time on Tuesday, but it's a very serious situation. And it's a situation where it's very different, in my opinion, to all the reckless driving we've been talking about, the situations we've seen pop up. I believe now Colbie Young being arrested, that is the seventh Georgia player arrested this year, this calendar year, second since the start of the season. But to me, guys, this is a very different situation than driving too fast. This is a situation that goes above and beyond. I know people feel very strongly about this as we've been getting information, as we've been posting details. Like I said, I would encourage y'all to go to Dawgs 24/7. We don't know what his status is. We're going to hear from Kirby Smart on Tuesday night. And I expect Kirby to say that they're going to wait this process out to see what happens. But based on the information we've seen, I feel very strongly that Colbie Young should not be a part of this team going forward. You look at the details, you talk about this situation where, this is an assault on a pregnant woman. The details and the situation is something that you just can't wave away. And I've been really frustrated with some of the folks on the message board, and it's not just on ours. I've seen it throughout, trying to poke holes, trying to victim blame, trying to kind of talk your way out of this. But it is what it is, in the very simple fact that we're talking about a football player and an assault on a pregnant woman, and a situation where I keep circling back to something I've made the point of a few different times with lesser charges on players, where you do not have the right, you don't have a right, I should say, to be on a college football team. You can lose that right. You can lose that opportunity for any number of reasons. So we don't know what's going to happen with Colbie Young. And I'm not going to sit here and say I feel very strongly that this is going to happen, or this, that Kirby is planning to do this. We don't know that. And frankly, I'm not sure that Georgia knows that. But I know I know how I feel on it. I don't think there's any excuse for physical abuse against a woman, even short of a pregnant woman. We'll see what happens. We will keep you guys informed. But I felt really strongly about that, and I wanted to make that known. And I know that not everybody's going to love that, but I don't do this job to be loved. I shoot straight and tell you how I feel, and that's what it's going to be. So we'll continue to give updates. We'll have a story tonight when Kirby either answers questions about Colbie Young or gives a statement before he starts answering questions. But I want to talk about that up front, make sure everyone knew what the situation was and sort of the latest there. Again, before we started recording, I checked probably 11:30, 11:45. Colbie Young still incarcerated, and just wanted to kind of lead off with that. Ben, any thoughts on this situation? Anything you want to share?
Well, to your point, I don't think that we know yet how the process is going to be handled. One thing I am confident in, just because of how Kirby Smart handled the Ra Thomas situation, he probably won't make a statement one way or the other until Colbie Young is not incarcerated and he has a chance to sit with him in his office and tell him whatever his fate is. That's what he did with Ra Thomas. I expect him to do the same with Colbie Young. Obviously a serious situation. I agree with everything that you said there on the front in terms of the seriousness of, what's in the report, as well as, the differences, I guess, between a situation like this and some of the other issues that we've had to talk about in the past. And I think it is, we've talked about it during those situations, that I think it is an important, it's important to to distinguish between the two types of situations, because I think when you start clumping everything in together, it downplays the significance and magnitude of situations like this one. So again, I think Kirby Smart's history, I mean, he's been pretty low tolerance on any kind of violence against women. I mean, we were talking about it before the show. I mean, Deontay Demery, Jeremiah Holloman. I know Ra Thomas was sort of given a second chance, but he ultimately was gone. So I don't expect Colbie Young to be around. I don't think that he should be necessarily either. And, I know football reasons are the last thing that are going to be talked about during all of this process. But there is no doubt about it that it was terrible decision making by Colbie Young, because he's a significant part of this football team at a critical juncture in the year.
Definitely. And I mean, it's a bad situation no matter what, but we're only talking, 3 months removed from Ra Thomas, who Ben mentioned, got a second chance and then ultimately lost his spot because another situation arose very similar to the one that got him arrested in January 2023. Kipp, any thoughts on this? Anything you would like to share before we move on?
Well, obviously, we don't know all the details, and there's a good chance we never do. This was unfortunate. I think these are decisions that, should not be made, especially at midnight. I don't think good things happen when you're going to discuss your relationships at that age, or really any age, that late at night. These are decisions that, again, now this is going to impact his life probably moving forward. But we can all agree that no good decisions were made last night by Colbie Young and all parties involved. But I think at this point, if you're Kirby Smart, you wait, you talk to him, and you kind of move on. I think that's what's going to happen here. I mean, this is not a good look on the program. And, obviously, I think any Georgia fan would agree that, this is an issue, but these are all individual issues. And they're just, Georgia is being looked at as a program with the culmination of all of these off the field incidents. But at the end of the day, these players are given every single resource possible to make good decisions. And Georgia is giving them all the info they possibly can to make decisions. But, you cannot monitor all these people 24 hours a day. And so it's unfortunate it happened. These are just things that, I mean, it's a legal issue now for Colbie Young, but I don't think this is going to be a football situation for him at Georgia much longer.
And I would just say that the thing to me when you look at this, because I mean, I'll be honest, I had both fans and people in the media reach out to me after Tuesday morning's news and say, what is going on? And I agree with Kipp that you're not going to be able to control everybody, and there's going to be guys get in trouble. But the biggest thing to me, and it kind of circles back to me really emphasizing what I think should come of this, is the discipline that follows. Because to me, that shows you how seriously you take situations like this and holding people accountable within your football program. Again, we don't know what's going to come of it. We'll see again Tuesday night what Kirby Smart has to say, and we will follow it very closely. We'll have stories. We'll make sure you guys are up to speed on that. Well, guys, let's circle back to Saturday. Georgia getting that 31-13 victory over Auburn. Some big plays along the way. I think about them kind of flipping the script and winning right before halftime, getting that late touchdown. And then the play that I think Auburn fans are still kind of fixated on, that fourth down play where Peyton Thorne changed the play and, Georgia stuffs him. And that's kind of all she wrote for Auburn. But I wanted to see what has stood out, what has stuck with you guys since then. I'll start and say I'll have my rewatch story on Wednesday morning. Was hoping to have it on Tuesday. Obviously, all the news with Colbie Young has kind of pushed things back, but I'll have that on Wednesday morning. Offensive MVP, I thought, was Trevor Etienne. Had a fantastic game. Had another game where there were several drives that it kind of felt like he by himself, really, really pushed. And I had kind of lost sight of when that game was going on, how big his play was right before the 4th and 1 that Georgia goes for and converts. He catches a ball out in the flat, and he makes a move to step by one guy. Then he steps through like a shoestring tackle the guy would have made and runs forward and picks up about 8 on 3rd and 9. Trevor Etienne, I think, is huge for this offense. Shout out Drew Bobo. Thought he played pretty well. Some high snaps early. Did give up a pressure that led to, I think it was probably a Georgia punt on a 3rd down early on. But Drew did well. I thought that was impressive. Still waiting to see a little bit more from those tight ends. Really liked the play Lawson Lucky made at one point. Georgia did a good job with 3 tight ends out there and kind of leaking Lawson out and took advantage of a play action. And defense, I thought they held up well. Without Smile Munden, obviously that was tough, but saw some good things from Raylan Wilson. Secondary did a pretty good job of keeping an Auburn offense that is very explosive pretty much in check and made the plays they had to get an 18-point win. Didn't anything still stick with you from that Auburn game? Any thoughts on how that played out? Anything that has still kind of stuck with you a few days after the fact?
Well, you brought up one of the things, and I know it's almost ironic because I wrote about Trevor Etienne post game, and I talked with him post game and talked with some of his teammates just about the performance that he had because statistically it was clear. But when I went back and did the rewatch, I was like you. I thought there were a couple of situations where you might not notice them. They're not as obvious because it's not a 40-yard touchdown run or it's not, breaking off this huge, explosive in the passing game or whatever. But he has moments. He did it in the Kentucky game. I thought that he did it in this one as well, where it's those just hidden yards almost that he picks up that gets you 6 when it should have been 2, or it gets you 9 when it should have been 1. And it's like you make one guy miss and all of a sudden he just gets a couple here or there. And maybe it's still a 3rd down, maybe it's still a 4th down, but it entirely changes what you're able to do. I think that he has that level of it to him that nobody else in the running back room does, especially in both the rushing game and the receiving game. I think that you did see, when Nate Frazier got his limited appearances in the second half, you saw that he has a make people miss ability to him that is similar to what Trevor Etienne has the ability to do and that other guys in that room don't have. So I think that you will probably see an increased work share for him going forward just because, he makes guys miss as well. But that was something that I definitely took away just because I think that that's a position room that I had such high expectations for at the beginning of the season. And I don't think it's necessarily their doing. I just think that the offensive line hasn't been as consistent as they would like. Losing Roderick Robinson, I think, was a big hit just because he brings an element that is unique at that position for this group that we just haven't seen the rushing performance, like the numbers that you maybe would want to see that would make people feel more comfortable. But when I go back and watch the game, I do think that there are situations where you see why Kirby Smart was so optimistic about that room coming into the season. And I think that, there's a chance that when you get into some of these big games, you're going to, especially, if you're down more wide receivers than you expected to be at this point in the year because of, bad decisions, that you're going to need more explosive playmaking from that running back room because it just doesn't exist at wide receiver the way that you want it to right now, and maybe even less so today than it did yesterday.
Definitely. Wanted to shout out also Nate Frazier. It's the first time we've seen him in a couple weeks. Thought he looked good with the carries he got. I was impressed with what he was able to do. And talk about a welcome back, London Humphreys with a couple of big catches. And I think it's just so cliche to compare him to Ladd McConkey. You guys can think about why maybe London Humphreys and Ladd McConkey would get compared. But he's been really big on 3rd down to this point in his Georgia career. And I think about Ladd basically being an automatic 1st down when he was thrown to. Really big, I thought, to get London back. And we'll be interested to see if we see more of him going forward. Kipp, what about you? Anything else from Auburn? What played out there? Anything that sort of sticks with you?
Yeah, I mean, there are some good things. I think Beck actually found the correct checkdowns throughout the game and made good decisions with the football. As you guys mentioned, London Humphreys, he's one of the few man beaters they have on the team. I mean, he can beat man coverage, and I think you saw that. He kind of streaked across the middle of the field and had a nice catch. I think I saw some of the best reps from Xavier Truss I've seen all season, but they came at guard. When he slid in for Micah Morris, I saw he had a pancake on one block. He actually got low and didn't look like, he was just standing straight up trying to block guys with his arms on a couple of plays. I mean, that might be an answer right there. I just think that, if he's not starting, if he's rotating in with Micah Morris and Dylan Fairchild, that just seems like a better situation. We're not there in practice to know who the best 5 are in practice, but those are the best reps I saw from Xavier Truss. And, they did better on third downs on both sides of the ball. And that is really the one thing where I've been trying to see what's different about this team than the last couple of seasons is the success on third down on both sides. I mean, 7 of 13 on offense, that's exactly where you need to be. 4 for 13 for Auburn. You can still do a little bit better in that area, but still in that range of where Georgia football has been the last couple of seasons. So that is a bright sign. They need to continue that as well. And I think Carson Beck's got to see Lawson Lucky more. I mean, this guy was getting open on so many snaps. I think that is one of your bigger playmakers on the team. He only had 1 catch in this game, but he broke open on the strong side linebacker multiple times. Could have had a second touchdown catch, I think, twice on the same drive where he was just open and Carson either checked down to the running back or, just didn't look his way. And so that's a situation where when you get back to the film room, you got to see that and go, okay, you know what? Lawson's winning a lot of reps out there and not getting the production that he probably should. Let's throw this guy some more. And to you guys' point, I mean, Bobo got valuable snaps. I mean, we're talking about second-year player holding his own out there, making a debut in SEC play. And a lot of people were talking about, him losing a couple reps, but he did not screw up out there. And I mean, you can't really say that about this offensive line this season. There have been a lot of guys that have missed blocks, missed assignments. Drew got beat a couple times, but it was still him, trying to make the right play, being in the right position. And he had some impressive blocks. And I just think that's going to pay off down the road. I mean, it paid off in this game. He performed well enough for them to win, but I just think that was just extremely valuable for him to get SEC reps that were not planned. I think that's the kind of depth that's really going to help Georgia down the road.
And I don't mean this as a shot at Jared Wilson, but there were some high snaps by Drew Bobo on Saturday, but Jared Wilson was dealing with some high snaps at times too. I think about that Kentucky game. So I was impressed. It was pretty cool hearing Carson Beck on Saturday and then Dylan Fairchild. We talked to him on Monday. You could tell like they were super proud of Drew Bobo, and I think he deserves a huge kudos because that was a very tough situation to be in. And also, I think there was probably some Auburn players that he knew. He was a one-time Auburn commit. Some of his Auburn High teammates from back in the day are also there, but I thought he held up well, and I thought that was definitely worth a kudos. Now, guys, we do have something we need to talk about out of that Auburn game, and it comes from some comments Kirby Smart made. I'm going to read. Kirby talked to DJ Shockley after the game and said the following. I tell you what, it was hot out there today, Shock, and if anything, I'm a little disappointed. I'm probably disappointed in our fans for the first time that I thought there was, a lack of really affecting the game crowd noise-wise, passion, and energy. Hey, it was hot, but our players have got full pads on, helmets, pads, and it's hot out there, and they're pushing and trying to have a home field advantage like we've had when we've played against teams, and I can't get crowd noise, Kirby was asked about that on Monday, basically to clarify, maybe elaborate on his feelings on that, and this is what Kirby had to say.
I think I said what I said and stand on what I said, and feel that it could have been better. But, my job is to coach the football team, and I'm going to do the best I can in my power. And I've been in some really good places where, there's times that you create a monster, whether it was when I was at FSU, when I was at Alabama, and you have to appreciate that, and you have to create home field advantages. And we've had coaches tell us that come here and play that it was the best environment they played in the entire year, but I didn't think that was Saturday, and I don't think I'm the only one that feels that way. But again, my concern is with Mississippi State, not the other. I trust the people that are in charge of it to help it. I trust our fans.
Kirby got a few questions about his fan comments on Monday. Was asked basically if there was more the team could do to try to help in this front. And he basically said, we have to focus on playing our best and, not really worry about what we have to do to get the fans involved. And wanted to read this quote. At the end of the press conference, Kirby was asked, was there a specific moment in that Auburn game, that he felt like the fans didn't kind of back up the team? And Kirby didn't really like that. He said, quote, "I'm not like, you're wanting to make this us against them. That's not really what this is about. We're a team. We're a unit, and I think it's okay to say how you feel and try to pull the family together and pull in the right direction. And you guys want to make it about," Kirby said this, "we're a team. We're a team. Let's do this together. Let's help each other out, not make it about he said and they said. I'm not into that. We need to all be together. And when I got hired here, it was all about pulling in the same direction, creating an atmosphere that's hard to play in. You win these games at home, and maybe you take it for granted if you win so many games at home, but I know this. It's hard. These teams are going on the road all across the SEC. You make it hard on them by what you do and what you create. So it's not about a specific point in time. It's about us all pulling in the same direction." All right, guys, what do we make of what Kirby had to say here? I will say that, one, it's kind of hard for us to hear the crowd now. Shout out to the new press box that is no longer open air, so we can't really hear them. But, I think from what I saw on Saturday, kind of surprisingly warm. I think that probably had something to do with it. And, just a game where it kind of felt like Georgia made plays here and there, but I could see fans just kind of going with the motion with what happened. I understand Kirby being frustrated, but I kind of think Sanford Stadium and game day ops, I think that's kind of more to blame. Let's do something to get 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids fired up. I love listening to Bob O'Reilly to start a game as much as the next person, but we can get music from the last 10 years to try to get people into games and try to get them, fired up for 60 minutes, because we all have seen Sanford super loud. I think about the Tennessee game in 2022. I wasn't there for Notre Dame in 2019, but I've heard great things about it. I kind of think that the folks running the show in the stadium, not Kirby Smart and the team, I kind of put the onus more on them than anybody. Ben, you were there on Saturday. Again, like I said, we can't really hear a ton from this new press box, but what did you make of what you saw on Saturday, and what do you think about what Kirby had to say?
I'm going to go on probably more of a monologue on this one than you would expect me to, but I truly feel like I'm going crazy during this situation. I cannot believe that this has reached the magnitude that it has. So here's just Jed May with Rivals. I sat next to him during the game, and, Jed and I we like to make some comments during the game, and he's probably going to be pissed at me for even bringing this up. But at one point in the game, it had been what we felt was pretty quiet. And Jed and I both cover recruiting. He was like, if I talk to any recruit today that tells me this was the best game day atmosphere that they've ever experienced, I'm going to call them a liar to their face. So this was during the game. Maybe 3 minutes later, they show on the Jumbotron, Alabama scoring a touchdown Vanderbilt scoring a touchdown to go up 20-7 on Alabama. And it was without a doubt the loudest that the stadium had been all day. And this was a half-filled Sanford, was louder for Vanderbilt scoring that touchdown on the Jumbotron than any moment that had happened during the game. So I'm going to defend Kirby real quick and say that before he made any comments, we were up in the press box making jokes, making comments about the fact that it felt like not the best version of Sanford Stadium. Now, to your point, we're now in the enclosed press box. Maybe that impacts our ability to get a read on the situation, but I'm going to say that Kirby Smart's post-game press conference probably validated a little bit what we were making comments about during the game. So I just want to get out in front of that and say, I do think it was a bottom tier Sanford Stadium performance. And I think that you can say that when you're Kirby Smart, when you've seen this team have really good performances. And again, I know there will be people saying, what can you do to fix game day ops? And I think that those are all things that will get factored in, especially since, and I wasn't in Tuscaloosa, but I heard a lot of people commenting about the unbelievable game day operation that they had put on the week before. So I'm sure that's fresh in Kirby Smart's mind, having just gone on the road and lost a close game in an environment where it was operated the way that you would want it to as a football coach, that I'm sure that he, just wanted to make that clear. I don't think that Kirby Smart is taking shots at the fan base. I think, and for starters, let's stop being fan base. Stop being so sensitive. Georgia goes 3-and-out one time to start the second half, and you want to fire Mike Bobo and bench Carson Beck. You can say whatever you want, but Kirby Smart has the audacity to say that this crowd wasn't Tennessee 2022. It wasn't Notre Dame 2019. It wasn't even last year, Kentucky. I thought Kentucky was one of the better environment. That night environment for the Kentucky game was one of the better Sanford Stadium environments that I'd been in. So there are examples that he could point to and say, you were great. He's even done that. You know what? You know what's going to happen? He's going to step this fan base is going to step up. You know why? Because Kirby Smart had the foresight to say, I don't like the fact that we have one more home game against a team that is, and I wrote about this yesterday, but this is the worst team in the SEC. Every fan base in the SEC knows it, that Mississippi State is the worst team. It's perceived as the worst team. On the field, it's been the worst team. Kirby Smart knows that getting your fan base up for this game when you've got Texas in 2 weeks is a really big challenge, especially when a lot of those fans are going to be spending a lot of money to be going to Austin, Texas to go try and create a little bit of a road environment there as well. And so I think that he looked ahead and he said this in his press conference yesterday, I'm not worried about the Auburn game. I'm not taking shots at you and wanting you to feel bad for yourself for how you handled the Auburn game. I want the Mississippi State game to be better because I'm looking ahead and I'm looking at Mississippi State. And I know that he was talking probably a little bit about the football team, but I think that he was also talking a little bit about let's create a good environment for the Mississippi State game, because if Auburn looked like that coming off of a loss for only the second home game of the year, what could Mississippi State look like when people are looking ahead to the Texas weekend? And so I think that the fan base is going to answer the call. I think that the student section is probably going to stay from start to finish, even if it's a blowout. And I think they're going to answer the call. And I think that Kirby Smart is going to go up to the press conference, and the first thing that he's going to say on Saturday after the game is, I want to give a shout out to the fan base for the environment that they created for the game, because I think that that's the nature of how all of this works. He's going to call people out. They're going to respond to it. He's going to be able to say, you know what, the fan base was fantastic today, because I think all of those things are what's going to happen. And you know what? The genius behind it, I think, for him is the best football player in the state of Georgia, Elijah Griffin, is on his official visit this weekend. It's his birthday weekend. People are going to think that it's not an important weekend for recruiting because there are games against, like we saw last weekend, there are games against Tennessee later in the year, the Black Friday game against Georgia Tech that might end up being viewed as bigger recruiting weekends where the full lists look bigger. This is a massive recruiting weekend. This is also a massive weekend, I think, for just having that home field advantage to avoid any slip-ups heading into the Texas game. And so, again, I'm shocked that I just felt the need to even go 10 minutes on a podcast talking about this topic. But I said this to you all post-game. My wife works for a financial advisor, and she had clients all day long that are all local, Big Athens, Georgia. Many are season ticket holders. And all day long, she said that every single in-person client that she had was genuinely pissed at Kirby Smart for taking a shot at the fan base. And I just want to say, have a little bit thicker skin than that. If you can, call out the football program when they lose to Alabama, I think that, you can handle Kirby Smart, taking some of his coaching microphone treatment that he gives his players during practice. I think you can handle him giving it to you as well. When let's just call a spade, it was a C- Sanford Stadium environment at best on Saturday.
Ben, should we start putting crowd atmosphere in the rapid report card at the end of games?
You know what? I think I'm going to have to on Saturday. I don't know if it'll happen forever, but on Saturday, I will tell you this right now. Anybody that's listening to this that's in Sanford Stadium, you, like the offense, like the defense, like the special teams, and like the coaches, you will get a rapid report card grade from Dawgs 24/7.
Kipp, what do you think about what Kirby had to say, and just maybe what you expect from the fans as in response to what Kirby had to say?
Yeah, I'll start off by saying I do remember also I've given the crowd game balls in the past as well. To Kirby's point, I mean, this is kind of a perfect storm. Forgive everyone for not creating the same environment that we just saw in Tuscaloosa the week before, which was, one of the best environments we've seen. We all commented. We met the DJ before the game. The guy knocked it out of the park. The overall experience there was from top to bottom. That was an A+, but it was also an A+ matchup. And so, coming home and trying to compare that to what you saw in Athens, it being homecoming game, different crowd. The fact that I think that from the stadium experience perspective, there needs to be a refresh from top to bottom, whether it's, You know what songs the bands are playing, the PA system, the concession stands now with alcohol. You need to streamline that experience so your fans aren't in line the entire game. There are lots of things, but then also just the product on the field. Kirby, I'm sorry, but this team isn't performing the same as the teams you've had in the past when you've credited the crowd for these awesome environments, including that Tennessee game. This team is just kind of puttering along. I mean, you look at the yards allowed per play on offense and defense. Defensively, we are talking about the most yards allowed per play since Kirby's first year in Athens so far. Offensively, we're looking at the worst yards per play since 2020. And so I know that your schedule, you've played some pretty good teams so far, but you're not having explosives on offense and you're not creating havoc plays on defense. And that just is not the most exciting product. You're plodding along and you're just, overpowering your teams at the end, or, you're just basically winning, a 12-round, boxing match on points, judges' decisions, no knockouts. So guess what? You got this weekend, you got your chance to show the fans, what a knockout looks like. This is a get right game for Georgia. So if you want your fan base to create the kind of atmosphere you want, then it's also on you as a coaching staff to make sure that your team goes out there and does exactly what they should do. Because even against Auburn, a team that we talked about how many times they turned the ball over, they didn't turn the ball over once against Georgia. So they came away from that game with positive points that Georgia should have been able to take advantage of, but didn't. An offense that doesn't make good decisions with the football made good decisions for the most part until the quarterback went rogue at the very end of the game. Then they made pretty solid decisions the entire game, and so I think that was a situation where the fans are like, this game shouldn't have been this close until the very end. Georgia, not even talking about like betting lines, but Georgia should have covered. You got to cover these games. You got to, blow a team out. You got to look like you did against Clemson in the season opener in front of your own fans at home. And that's a situation where, you've spoiled your fan base, but I mean, that's what you want. You want these guys to be spoiled, or else you just need to come out and tell them, guys, we ain't that team. And until Kirby says that, and then the fans have to expect championship football. And I think this weekend against a Mississippi State team that's dreadful, this is your chance, because these guys are, looking at the numbers, they are allowing some horrible numbers on defense. And so this is it. You got your quarterback. You still got plenty of playmakers. Go out there and make it happen.
Kipp made a good point about, the fans in the line. I've heard that alcohol sales in the stadium, it's been kind of rough trying to get people siphoned through, that it's kind of taken a while. Somebody made a good point. I want to say it was Dawgs HQ's Palmer Toms. A lot of the atmosphere in Sanford Stadium, they have those lights. We don't see those during day games. So that's one less thing unless you kind of have. And even like when you think about the fourth quarter of night games when they have the lights, I think there's a lot of fans that hang around to do that. Some may wind up leaving as soon as that's done, but that's sort of another element when you have a day game that you can't lean on to kind of generate the atmosphere. I want to read this comment from Tanner, because this was sort of a point I made. Fans have got to be better, but also game day ops seems so outdated and need to step it up in game energy. I agree. And again, I think my biggest thing is let's get some modern music. Let's get some, I'm okay leaving Bob O'Reilly for the intro because Georgia's done that for so long, and that's fine. But let's give kids that are in the stands who are going to really be generating the most energy stuff that they would be listening to if they're out, give them something that they can kind of get fired up with. Before we get off of this, I want to make this point and see what each of you guys think. I am not someone who is a proponent of talking about the black jerseys every chance that he gets. I would get so sick of it. But you want to talk about an instant shot in the arm? I think if Georgia came out wearing the black jerseys on Saturday, that, again, the line on this game is what, 33, 34 points? The last time Georgia wore the black jerseys in the regular season was against Mississippi State. Ben, are you against, let's break out the black jerseys. Let's have a little fun.
I mean, I am with the black jerseys. I'm with the black jerseys just becoming a normal jersey that Georgia wears. They wear it 3 to 4 times a year because it's an awesome jersey. Why not? They've created too much mystique around it that they feel like they can't wear it. If there's going to continue the mystique around it, my only pushback on having it this week is I feel like you got to wear it for the Black Friday game against Georgia Tech.
Fair point. Kipp, any thoughts on having a little jersey fun against Mississippi State?
I mean, as a Falcons fan and seeing the red helmets and knowing like your best uniform options, you just like to keep from your fan base and your players. I mean, I understand the frustration. Like there's no mystique. You either have those jerseys as an option or you say publicly, we are never wearing these again and be done with it. Like just retire them. Because if they're just there and you just like let recruits wear them and like pretend they're an option and then never wear them, I just think it's honestly disrespectful to your fan base and to everyone because everybody loves those jerseys. There's nothing superstitious about them. You either wear them and you play Georgia football or they're not Georgia uniforms anymore. Make a choice and stick with it. And they should be the annual Black Friday uniforms. It would be amazing. And Georgia Tech would just know every year, like, we're done for. Like, we got no chance. Like, these are the harbinger of doom. And that's exactly how they should be used. And the recruits should know every year, we're going to get to wear these on Black Friday on national TV every year. And it's going to be awesome. And then you don't have to worry about mystique. It's just an awesome experience as you win the in-state rivalry game every year with those jerseys on.
It's also like, looking at it now, think about all the Georgia great players that never got to wear that black jersey. And now it's like, you start wearing it. It's like, how disrespectful is it to Stetson Bennett and Brock Bowers and all these like great Georgia, players that never got to wear a black jersey and they probably would have loved to. And now, I'm sure they would probably be a little pissed off. You look up and all of a sudden a 4-1 Georgia team getting to play Mississippi State. All of a sudden they're getting to wear a black jersey. Like what did they do special that deserved the black jersey?
I'm okay, I think, with the Black Friday. Let's hold it for then, and let's make that an annual tradition. I think let's see that happen. We're going to take a quick break, talk a little bit about Mississippi State, talk about Elijah Griffin, as Ben mentioned earlier, and then talk a little UGA hoops. All right, guys, we're getting ready for another afternoon kick in Sanford Stadium. Georgia getting ready to play Mississippi State, 4:15 on SEC Network. You've got a Georgia team, number 5 in the country, 4-1 overall, 2-1 in the SEC. Mississippi State down toward the bottom of the SEC, second to last, 0-2 in the SEC, 1-4 overall. They are only above Auburn, who is now 0-3 in the SEC. This is a bad Mississippi State team. I don't think there's any way to talk around that. Jeff Lebby in his first year came over from Oklahoma, trying to get this thing headed in the right direction after Zach Arnett's only season as the full-time head coach just did not go according to plan. Blake Shapen gets hurt early in the year, the transfer from Baylor. They turned it over to Michael Van Buren to be the quarterback. I asked Kirby about what he's seen from Van Buren. He's just a freshman. Kind of got thrown into the action when Shapen got hurt. Here's what Kirby had to say about Michael Van Buren and just about Mississippi State in general.
Yeah, I tell you, he got thrown into the fire quick. I mean, in the middle of an SEC game to have to go in and play and then turn around the next week and go to Texas. I mean, that was two really tough games. He's a tremendous athlete. I think they've allowed him to do some things that he's really good at, and they're mixing the other quarterback in with quarterback run. So they both are capable runners, but they bring Chris in and do more stuff with him. And I got a lot of respect for Jeff Lebby and his offense and what he's done and where he's been. The people he's worked for in his career are really good offensive coaches. So they're hard to defend because they space you out, they spread you out, they tempo you, they count your numbers in the box. I mean, they're almost always going to be right in terms of what they run. you got to beat the man in front of you to beat him. You got to outwork the guy to win 2 gaps a lot of times, because it's hard the way they play, and they got really good backs.
So this Mississippi State team, not gone according to plan. Obviously, losing your starting quarterback doesn't help. But just looking through their schedule, took care of business in week 1, 56-7 win over Eastern Kentucky. Lost at Arizona State 30-23. Kind of gave you some hope, though. They got down, rallied back, and just didn't have enough to win at Arizona State. The next week is where things went sideways. 41-17 home loss to Toledo. A 24-point loss at home against a MAC team. They hosted Florida the next week, 45-28 loss. It didn't really ever feel like they had a chance to win that one. And then, honestly, a pretty decent showing 2 weeks ago at Texas, 35-13, where I'd say was in it for a half and then just couldn't stop Arch Manning and keep up. I want to make sure I mention, too, Kirby mentioned a second quarterback, Chris Parson is the other quarterback that they've kind of got in with the run element. Jeff Lebby's a guy that's really well respected as an offensive mind. I believe his father-in-law is Art Browse. He's part of that Art Browse tree that we've seen so many different teams start orchestrating and using that offense. Did a really good job at Ole Miss as the offensive coordinator. I believe he was at UCF before that. Did a good job in his short tenure back at Oklahoma, which I believe he might have played at Oklahoma. And then gets his chance at Mississippi State. It's not going well. I went through the stats before Kirby yesterday because I'm usually looking. There's got to be some category that this team is really good in. Not really. I mean, just the stats, total offense, total defense, toward the bottom of the league. It's going to be a tough one for Mississippi State. So, Kipp, what are you looking for from Georgia out of this game, knowing, last we looked, I think Georgia's a 33 or a 34-point favorite. Georgia's expected to win this one pretty handily. So what do you want to see out of the home Bulldogs in this game?
A blowout. This should be a game where Georgia gets to name its score. I mean, this is what I said earlier. This is the perfect get-right game. Yeah, Mississippi State's got some downfield options on offense, a couple receivers that have had some explosives. Johnny Daniels has been a solid back for them, but their offensive line does not protect well. They're allowing plays in the backfield worse than any team in the SEC, and I think they're the worst in the country as far as pass protection. And so, for your front seven, this should be a game where you put up numbers, you rotate guys in, and they create havoc plays. And guess what? On the other side of the ball, they're the same. They do not make plays in the backfield. They're the worst team in the SEC as far as sacks and tackles for loss. So this is a game where your running backs should feast. You should have at least one guy with 100+ yards, if not 2 guys approaching it. Their rush defense, they're allowing over 213 yards per game. And, I mean, Georgia's nowhere close to that offensively right now. It's the worst rushing attack that I think they've had, under Kirby Smart. And so that is an area where I get it. I mean, we've talked about, the passing attack, making explosives, but it's time for Georgia to have some explosive plays in the run game. And we saw the potential for that. You've got players on this team who have the ability to break big runs. And I think this is where the offensive line has to come together and gel, not have lapses in play. Ernest Green, a couple plays in the last game where he just missed his assignment, block the wrong direction. And when you're playing the zone, the split zone run, you can't block the wrong direction and let the edge crash in on a play, because the cut has to be there. He has to be able to cut back if he wants to. It messes everything up. And this is where that, you got to get together, make sure you're having the right calls at the line of scrimmage. And these guys have to know what, exactly which direction they're blocking in this game. And that's because this is the game where you know what's down the road. You have to come into this game knowing you have plays that you can run and be confident in those plays being successful. Exactly what this Mississippi State team is bringing to the table, a chance for you to go out there and run your plays, have some success, build the confidence, and know who your playmakers are. And it extends to the passing game. We saw London Humphreys. I mentioned Lawson Lucky. These are your guys that you need to be able to, pay it forward for them getting open. And so I think this is where Carson Beck, I talked about his checkdowns earlier. He made the right decisions, but you got to trust that protection. The protection has to be there. He's got to throw to open guys downfield. So this needs to be an explosive game on both sides, so that Kirby Smart doesn't have to call out his fan base, because they had things to celebrate on Saturday and they played like a top 5 team, because they're still ranked in the top 5. You got to go out there and look like one against a team that's outmatched in every facet of the game.
Ben, what about you? What are you looking for from Georgia in what should be a one-sided game?
Well, I agree with Kipp. I think the blowout is the important part of this one. It sounds weird to say in an SEC matchup, and I know that Kirby Smart definitely doesn't think about things this way, but I think it is tied into the stadium atmosphere and the fans' reactions to how games are going. Georgia's 1-4 against the spread this year. So I know that football coaches a lot of times claim they don't care about those types of things, and in some cases that may very well be true. Fans care, because fans do have emotional reactions to these things. And when they know, hey, this is a team that you're supposed to beat by 3 touchdowns and a field goal, and you don't beat them by 3 touchdowns and a field goal, they're going to feel like you underperformed in that game. And so right or wrong, that's just the way things are going to be. And so when you've got an SEC team coming into town and you've got a 5-touchdown spread on it, I mean, that's a tough cover, but it's one where I think that you got to make a statement. I think to everything that Kipp said about where Mississippi State is weak, you have an opportunity to exploit them. I think that Georgia's passing game needs to, hit some big plays that they just haven't going into that Texas game. I think this is a very much get right game on the offensive side of the ball to try and figure out who can do those things the best, hit some big explosive plays, have some easy touchdowns, get more possessions than you've had in the Auburn game and the Kentucky game. And then I think that you can run it up a little bit more on the scoreboard. And then I think, defensively, it's just, they do not protect the quarterback well. Georgia's actually done a pretty good job of affecting the quarterback recently, aside from the Alabama game, which not everybody has Jalen Milroe. So it's a little bit easier to not affect the quarterback when Jalen Milroe is the one running around with the ball. But I would say affect the quarterback, because you're going to be going into an environment the next week where, assuming Quinn Ewers is playing, you got to get him on the ground to win that football game. And so I think that in many ways, this is a great matchup for Georgia to be able to figure out the things that it's been struggling to figure out. Like Kipp said, run the ball. I think that's a key part of this as well. And, get right, but also provide just a score discrepancy, as simple as that sounds. And I know how annoyed Kirby Smart would probably be to even hear that that's something that someone would say. You want to win your SEC games, whatever, you want to play well. That's all that matters. Well, unfortunately, when your fan base is starting to get a little bit disgruntled, sometimes when you're a 34-point favorite, you need to win by 35, and that's just the way that it is.
Man, is Kirby going to be really mad when he watches this on his lunch break, as I know he does every single week? The thing I was going to say, the thing that I want to see is Georgia create turnovers. I was just looking at the numbers there while Ben was talking. Georgia is tied for last in the SEC with Florida and Auburn with 4 created turnovers. You just got to take advantage. This is going to be a freshman quarterback. The conversation last week against Auburn was all about creating turnovers and jumping on Auburn and making them make mistakes, and then you don't force any turnovers. So that's what I want to see more than anything. And then probably just see some more running backs aside from Trevor Etienne really get the ball rolling. Let's let Nate Frazier get 9-10 carries. Let's see if – I feel like we're continuing to see some more confidence from Branson Robinson, and he's made some more plays as the season's gone along. Let's see more of that, and let's get a good feel for what this team can do moving forward. Want to make sure and say, if you want more information on Mississippi State, 12 o'clock Eastern, 11 a.m. Central Time on Thursday, David Murray from our Mississippi State site is going to come on. We're going to get the full breakdown on the Maroon Bulldogs, get ready for this big game, and see what we think is going to happen and project how this thing's going to go in Sanford Stadium on Saturday afternoon. Well, Ben, you teased it earlier in this episode, Elijah Griffin getting ready to make a visit to Sanford Stadium. Tell us what we need to know on that and any other visits of note going into another big home game for Georgia.
Well, this is just different than last year, especially. I mean, Georgia kind of had its class figured out at this time last year, and there wasn't a whole lot of in-season official visits going on. That's not I mean, they still have 20 guys in the class already, but that's not entirely the case. There's a lot more questions still to be answered in the 2025 class than there was in the 2024 class at the same point in the calendar. And I think that right now, you've got Elijah Griffin coming in on his official visit. It's his birthday weekend. I think that it's not a coincidence that he's taking his birthday official visit to Georgia. Georgia has always been viewed as the team to beat. All crystal balls have been on Georgia for quite a long time now. I think that this is a recruitment where it would be truly surprising if he ended up at Miami or USC over Georgia, but it's also one of those things. Everybody knows how much anxiety there gets in recruitments, especially of this nature, until it actually happens. So I think that everyone's just waiting for it to finally happen. I know there's some important conversations that typically go on those official visits that Elijah Griffin will be able to have this weekend that he hasn't been able to have with them up to this point, even though he's been on a ton of visits. And so, if we're looking at this and we're doing this show next Tuesday and we're talking about things coming out of the weekend, if Elijah Griffin is on Georgia's commitment list at that point in time, I don't think it would be surprising just because it is his birthday weekend. I know that emotions are going to be high. He's going to be having a good time with family and things like that. He has also said to me in the past that it could easily still go to signing day. So I don't think this is a situation where Georgia is just expecting him to show up on campus and commit and everything will be done and that's that. I do think there are conversations that need to be had and probably some takeaway conversations with his family and other decision makers that need to be had before he actually goes public with anything. But I definitely think that Georgia's got to be feeling good. And this is a big visit weekend for Kirby Smart, for Trey Scott, for Glenn Schumann, for Travaris Robinson, for the entire defensive staff. Getting a guy like this is integral. You recruit a guy like this that's a 5-star status like he is since he was in the 8th grade. It's not an in-state recruitment that you feel comfortable missing out on. And so I think that this is one that Georgia has keyed in on. And I do like Georgia's chances to get him. He's not the only guy that's going to be on an official visit. We've talked a lot about Chase Linton, the edge rusher from North Atlanta High School. He was previously committed to Rutgers, decommitted last month, is keeping things open. He's taken a visit to Florida State. Alabama has, checked in on him a little bit as well. At this time, I do still favor Georgia's chances to get him because I know in the summer they were pushing really hard. He came in on a couple of different camp visits, and the fact that he returned for a second camp visit said a lot to Georgia about how much he was interested in becoming a Bulldog. He was supposed to be on a visit last weekend, but just because of the weather and the biolab fire and Conyers, it's shifted around a lot of high school football schedules in the Atlanta area. So he ended up playing last Saturday and wasn't able to come on the visit to Georgia. So it wasn't that he didn't want to be there, wasn't planning to be there. He just couldn't. He will be on his official visit this weekend for the Mississippi State game. So 2 big official visits. And I'm pretty sure it's the first 2 official visits since the summer official visit weekend. No, I'm confident that it's the first 2 official visits since the summer official visit weekend. So a little bit out of the ordinary in-season official visits for Georgia. I haven't confirmed everything on this yet, so I don't want to put a name out there. But I will say I am expecting at least one other 5-star visitor to be on campus this weekend for Georgia as well.
And the way you get that information going forward is subscribe to Dawgs 24/7, and Ben will have you all up to speed on what's going on. It's always important to stay woke this time of year. Ben, I wanted to make sure and let you talk too about a current Georgia commit, Todd Robinson, who had a big weekend. What can you tell us about what you wrote about in the latest Future Dog Watch?
Well, I didn't know when I was starting to do the Future Dog Watch thing that Georgia had the dog of the week. And I don't know if that's a new thing that they've been doing or just something that they've started doing this year, but they'll send out a graphic every week to, the dog of the week, though I've seen a couple of times they've sent out it to multiple people because of big weeks. So, there's a little bit of politics going on in the recruiting game. Imagine that. But I think that without question this week, and I haven't seen who the official one is from Georgia, but it would be hard pressed for me to think that anyone other than Todd Robinson is the dog of the week for a couple of reasons. One, he was playing in a matchup against another Georgia commit, Elias Williams, who also had a really good game. But it was Todd Robinson's team. I think they won 56-37. I'm trying to pull up the right here so that I don't get it wrong. 21 of 27 passing, 269 yards passing with a touchdown. He also rushed the ball 23 times for 132 yards and 4 touchdowns. I think that with a stat line like that, it's going to be hard pressed for anybody to top him for dog of the week, though there were a couple other good performances. Tyler Williams, 4 catches for 100 yards and 1 touchdown, had a pretty good week as well. So I feel like every time that we do this, we talk about one of the Georgia wide receiver commits, proving that he's got big playability. And this week was Tyler Williams' week.
Definitely good news for Georgia fans, music to Georgia fans' ears when it comes to these future receivers. UGA Men's Basketball Minute. I want to shout out our intern, Davis Mosley, who's been helping us with Georgia men's basketball recruiting. He got some intel from a scrimmage on Friday night. I would encourage you guys to go to Dawgs 24/7 and read the full notes. But my biggest takeaways were that Silas Demery Jr. has made significant strides to the point that people see him as an all SEC caliber player. And I think that that's huge for Georgia going into Silas's sophomore year, and that things are really promising with Asa Newell. It seems like things are going well as he transitions from that 5-star recruit to a college freshman getting ready for the start of his season. Again, shout out Davis Mosley. He's done a very good job for us since he got started writing about recruiting. And again, if you're interested in the Georgia men's basketball team, go find those notes from Friday night. Very interesting intel on this team as they get ready with just a few weeks before this season gets started. Silas and RJ Godfrey will be in Birmingham next Tuesday for SEC Men's Basketball Media Day. So it will be fun to follow what the conversation is there and to see what Mike White and those players had to say as they get ready for the season. All right, before we get out of here, Kipp, I made the mistake on Saturday night not bringing up Falcons 36, Buccaneers 30, a very nerve-wracking game where it just seemed like the Falcons were in it, then they weren't, then they were in it, and then they find a way to win. Kirk Cousins throws for 509 yards, winds up connecting with Kadarius Hodge for the touchdown in overtime. How you feeling about Kirk Cousins? How you feeling about the Falcons after that one?
Boy, did I like that. I mean, it was amazing to watch. I think, kind of just the experience we thought we were going to get coming into the season. He let it rip, and good things happened. And I think you kind of look back now on the Chiefs game, the Steelers game, and those are winnable games. But at the same time, you kind of think, okay, maybe Kirk Cousins was just getting back to 100% because you saw what he was able to do. And, just watching the Chiefs last night, it just felt like the fact that that was a winnable game and the fact that the Falcons are now, atop of the division, I think this team has a lot of potential. So it was really entertaining to watch. It was one of the better football games. I would say, Thursday night football has been not enjoyable. It's usually the worst matchup. And the Falcons have just put an exciting product on the field in 3 primetime games in a row. They were a completely botched lack of pass interference call in the end zone against the Chiefs from just going 3-0 in those games. So I think it's an entertaining product, and I just think it was awesome to see the Falcons honor Matt Ryan by, winning a game the night he went into the Ring of Honor, because I just think you look back to that end of season game where he called it for CBS, the last game of the Arthur Smith era in Atlanta, and it just felt like there was probably a part of him that was kind of like, I told you guys, like whenever we basically told him we don't want you anymore, be gone, we paid the price for it. But now, let's honor Matt Ryan. We knew that you gave everything to this franchise, and it was kind of a healing moment in that aspect as well. But the worst thing now is there's hope, and hope is a fickle beast, and so I think Falcons fans right now probably don't know what to do with it because it's really never treated them well. And so I think just enjoy being atop the division, because I watching the Saints lose, watching the Bucs lose, there's joy to be found with just being, the best in this division, regardless of what happens in the playoffs.
Kipp hit on the biggest thing for me. They're entertaining to watch. And so that's kind of been my bar for this franchise after 28-3, and they've missed it so many years in a row. So enjoyed seeing that game, and they've beaten the Saints, they've beaten the Bucs. I can say I'm a pretty satisfied fan. Ben, any thoughts on that Falcons game and just where they are right now?
I can't believe I'm saying it. They're the most fun team in the NFL right now. They are fun on offense. They do fun things on defense. Like, I think that they I mean, they've had the ball with a chance to win or tie with less than 3 minutes in every single game that they've played this season. So you know that if you're just an objective NFL fan, you know that you're signing up for a good football game if the Falcons are playing, win or lose. I think that ultimately it's probably going to be the death of our good friend Kipp Adams, because I think that you know, you can only win so many of these like last minute one possession games before, you know, something goes awry and then all of a sudden your heart starts hurting again. But I think we should just enjoy the moments that we have while we have them. Aren't I right, Kipp?
It's the only thing I can do. I mean, there's only so many times that Kirk Cousins is going to be able to go out there and set franchise records and throw for over 500 yards. The fact that it took breaking records to win the game probably shows that or won't be able to do that on a night in, nine out basis. But I mean, I'll just counter that. It's Zach Robinson's calling his own plays for the first time and getting better every week. So you know what? I'm right back. I'm right back in saying that this is it. I mean, we're double-digit wins. What can go wrong? I think we're just going to keep going in the right direction, and I definitely won't be regretting having these thoughts right now.
Especially putting them on a podcast where people can watch or listen to it. Just when he thought he was out, they pull him back in. We will end the episode right there. I appreciate Kipp and Ben for popping on. Thanks to everyone who watched this live, everyone who is watching or listening to it after the fact. Be sure to go to Dawgs 24/7, subscribe, go to our YouTube, go to our TikTok, all kinds of good content there. Again, I want to plug noon Eastern time, 11 Central on Thursday. We will have David Murray from our Mississippi State site on to talk Bulldogs versus Bulldogs. It should be a fun one, no doubt. So for Kipp Adams and Ben Wolk, I'm Jordan Hill. Until next time, take care, everybody.